when we sat down a few months ago to do our Spider-Man No Way Home review, I said at the time, this is the most anticipated episode of this podcast. Not true. This is the most anticipated episode of this podcast. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Talkin' Pop. We are doing our full-on spoiler review of the Batman. I'm not going to be... I hate when you listen to these podcasts and they say 100 times, like, we're going to start talking spoilers. We're going to start talking spoilers.
Yeah.
It's like, no. It says spoiler review in the title. So if you clicked on this and you haven't seen the movie, I don't know what you're doing, but that's your problem.
If you get upset, that's your deal.
So can I take you guys on a quick little journey here?
Take us along, Rob.
Normally, spin us a yarn.
Yes, normally I throw to one of you to start, but I selfishly would like to start this week.
How dare you?
You mean you, who's been talking about this movie on every episode that we've had? You want to start? Oh, okay.
Who's also wearing his Batman t-shirt? Yeah.
And has his Batman cup in the background. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, Rob, you don't seem excited, so you know.
So no, but I want to walk you through the journey that I went on with this movie because, as you guys know, like I was really, really excited for this, and like I've always been someone who goes and sees movies that I really like and I'm excited about multiple times. This is the first time that I saw a movie 3 days in a row. Like I saw Thursday, Friday,
Next
Saturday. My ass was in the theater watching this 2 hour and 55-minute epic.
You spent more than an entire work day.
Yes, watching the Batman. So
the movie theater stocks went up just from Rob.
Yeah,
from Rob's appearance.
It had like $125 million opening weekend. I was a big contributor to that.
You're a big contributor to that. You're in the poorhouse.
So, we're gonna start with just talking about general overall feelings of the movie as a whole. For me, it was really interesting because I think when you're as excited about something as I was for this, like subconsciously you kind of go into the movie and you've sort of already made the movie in your head.
A little bit,
yeah. So the first time I watched it, I'm going to be honest with you guys, like I left and it, by no means was I like, oh my God, that was so disappointing. I was like, that was excellent. But like, that wasn't how I kind of envisioned it going. I was like, that's like, I was thrown off a little bit in certain things, particularly like the super broody nature of Pattinson's Batman. So when I went back the second and third times, knowing what I was like getting myself into, I absolutely love this film. I love this film. I love it from start to finish. It's just having a better sense of understanding of what they were going for helped me so much in just digesting it as a whole. And I absolutely love this movie. So we're going to throw to you guys. Kelly, you go first.
Yeah, so I've seen this movie twice. I had my tickets for the first viewing, and then I just had to go back. I wasn't as planned out as you, Rob. You knew you were going 3 times. My second time was
took days off work.
An ad hoc decision. Yes, this movie gets better upon multiple viewings. You sort of set that expectation versus reality part of your brain off when you go back. And you really start to take in the nuances of what Matt Reeves and everyone involved in this movie were really trying to achieve. And it's funny, Rob, I left the first viewing, I left the same way going like, there's something, I don't know, like it wasn't what I expected. But then as I was, I knew I wanted to go back, so that's a good sign. And then I also was reading different reviews and listening to different podcasts and watching different videos. And anytime that I found someone, sort of leaning negative, I found myself like internally defending this movie. So I guess that means I really liked it. I think I'm coming up to loving it. There's a few little pieces that I don't love, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So overall, I think this exceeded my expectations possibly, has a few issues, but I could go see it a third, fourth, fifth time. So I think that speaks volumes that it was a good watch for me.
Brad.
I'm not in your guys' camp here. I'm not in this like I need multiple viewings. I was giddy almost the entire viewing. And after.
I was giddy too. I want to make that clear. I was giddy too. It was just like I said, I think to a degree I made the movie in my head, and you should never do that. So it's
No, and
kinda
I
on
understand,
you.
but
Yeah.
but I'm the one. I'm constantly the one, especially with you, Rob. Kelly, not so much. I feel like I don't need to like reel you in sometimes. Rob, when he gets like really excited about a movie, I'm kind of like, okay, because do you want to know why? Man of Steel. Okay.
Yes.
Man of Steel.
Yeah.
I was the most excited I think I'd ever been for a movie, going into a movie theater, and came out so disappointed.
Yeah.
So I think that general like scarring has made me a little bit more able to be like, I'm really, really excited for this, but just calm down. And just calm down and just take this in the way you would any other movie. And if you come out of it at a high, awesome. If you come out of it a low, what have you. So this was a love letter to me. This was a love letter to the Batman across the board. And for me, it was just, I even found myself getting kind of like choked up at times, just because whenever it's something that I can Batman. But I'm a sucker. I've literally said that on this podcast multiple times, that I'm like, I got choked up. But when I feel something that has been made with true passion and understanding of source material, of other incarnations, and a full spectrum of understanding of something, and then using that and a passion behind it to give you what they really see on like what their vision was, I can't help but be like, this is a passion project. This was a full out passion project on a giant scale of something that has been done before, and you're behind the eight ball. You're behind the eight ball when there's something that's been done like this multiple times. I just kept watching it going, oh my God, he gets it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he gets it.
100%.
And that's not just Matt Reeves. That's Robert Pattinson. Oh my God, he gets it. That's Zoe Kravitz. Oh my God, she gets it. That's Colin Farrell. Oh my God, she gets it. And it was just this constant feeling of excitement and understanding. And it was like this, they had taken Matt Reeves had kind of blended all the best parts of different movie incarnations and animated series incarnations. It was like where maybe somebody went a little further than others. Like, so Tim Burton made it like really gothic and very like cartoony. Matt Reeves kind of took that and like smoothed it out into like Christopher Nolan's like real world aspect of it, and smoothed it out.
It's like you put Burton and Nolan in a blender. And that's what he made. Yeah.
I kept thinking it the whole time, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but there were genuine times where I was sitting there laughing. I was laughing, and not from a standpoint of just like, this is silly or something, or like, this is funny. I'm like, holy crap. Like the reveal of the Batmobile, and this like surging energy of just like, we're getting there, but it's not there yet. We got to like, and this cutting back and forth between shots of Colin Farrell's Penguin and Batman and Zoe Kravitz, and this big
that's the best scene in the movie for sure.
For sure. Like it was one of those things where I felt like I was a part of it. Also, I did see this on an IMAX screen, and I told you guys you have to see this. And I don't mean just you guys, I mean the listeners. Go see this on an IMAX screen. If you haven't yet, go. I don't care where you have to go. Because the impact of the sound, the impact of the screen that you have in front of you, and again, this understanding of elements of filmmaking and everything are all brought into a crescendo of one film at one time. Boom, the Batman.
So let's talk about the story and the Gotham that Matt Reeves has built here. I was hooked from the word go plot-wise in this movie. I loved everything about it. It's so, as you said, Brad, it's so true to the source material. Like right from the get-go, and the way it's all interwoven. It's like you have the overarching story of like trying to find the Riddler, the serial killer.
Yeah.
But then that takes him on a journey through like the slums of Gotham, and he's going to the Iceberg Lounge, and you're seeing like you're feeling
44
the mob.
below.
44 below.
The underbelly of Gotham.
You're feeling that, and it's like the slums of Gotham. Gotham is raining all the time. It's dark. It's really like
Batman.
Yeah, it's
Batman.
It's so true to the source material. But I was like hooked the whole way through with the whole Riddler storyline and like who he's gonna target next and the clues and the puzzles. And this is the first Batman film too that I can ever remember where he's just like chilling with cops all the time.
Yeah, and he's kind of got the inside, like every iteration we've seen a relationship with Gordon, but this was unique in that he's his way in to be able to go and detect what's going on at these crime scenes. I think what else grabbed me about this version was you had things that were so distinctly familiar in Gotham, and I don't think anyone's done Gotham better. Truly.
No one's come anywhere close to doing.
Not
Gotham
even
this
close.
good. Yeah.
But then you also had new things like the contact lens camera, and you know, you in the scene when he's kind of surveying the crime scene of the first murder of the mayor, and he's walking really slowly. There was almost part of me that was like, maybe you pick up the pace there, Batman. You're walking a little slow. But then you realize it's because he's taking in all the information for him to go and watch later. And I think coupled with this gothic version of Gotham, you also have this really realistic interpretation where, because Batman is essentially this like nocturnal animal, he has to come home and recount everything that he just took in. And he's writing in his journals, and his journal entry starts on Halloween night. And I was just like, oh shit. Like,
yes. You get it. Like,
yeah. You know, we'll talk about some of the issues that I have with this movie, but one of them that was certainly not, like, one aspect that was not an issue whatsoever, and I will fight anyone who says it's an issue, was Matt Reeves' vision of Gotham.
Yes.
It was spot on, and that immediately made you feel like, to what you guys said, like it was an amazing blend of realistic and grounded, but also that campy comic book world that we've been dying to see. He
live
nailed
action
it.
Animated series.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to say too, because again, I am here in New York, and so knowing that obviously Gotham
Square Garden.
Yeah.
Gotham Square Garden, there was just aspects that were just brought more into like the focus that was clearly like, you know, this was Bob Kane's vision. This was that, you know, Finger's vision back in the day when they were making this. New York was very much a part of that. Gotham, and leaving the theater and walking around, you just like it hits you different because
you were looking into dark alleyways.
I was like, who wants to fight right now? I wouldn't have been able to do this podcast. I would have got killed. But
you're walking around going, they think I'm in the shadows, but I am the shadows.
I am the shadows. But it makes such an impact to know that again, because you're getting that visceral feeling of like, this is New York, but it's not New York. This is a heightened version of New York. This is a comic book version of New York. This world that, like I just said, Bob Kane had created back when they made this. And to know that it's like on film in a gritty way that feels kind of like that grungy 80s / early 90s New York, where crime was just rampant and there was like graffiti everywhere. And there was just this undertone of kind of a depressing feeling, but knowing that it's kind of backlit by this comic book feel. So it's not like so in your face. It's just, he captured it so perfectly, in my opinion, that it, like I said, there was moments where I was just like so blown away by how seamlessly he captured it on film, that it felt real without feeling so real that it made it like almost uncomfortable.
I think the decision to use Liverpool as Gotham in this was fantastic. And like you blended it in, so we made it feel like New York and an American city, but it didn't feel like, when you look at like The Dark Knight, for instance, you're like, oh, Gotham is Chicago.
It was very clearly Chicago.
Taking it to like such a non-traditional location, I want to say, sort of helped make it feel like its own place, which is like you said, Brad, it's like, it was like a city playing the character of New York, if that makes any sense. It's like
it does make perfect sense. It
Yeah.
does make perfect sense. And that's why again, exactly to your point, it's not supposed to like that was DC's thing always, was that it was these made up cities that was like New York was the inspiration for Gotham, and to make it so seamlessly feel that way but not actually be that.
Yeah.
Just a heightened version of it with like certain pastel colors blended in with this film noir, black and white kind of feel, this undertone, this coolness to
This is a dark movie.
It's
like
a
it's
dark
Yeah, like
movie.
it's cinematically, it's a dark
yes,
movie.
But that is Batman. Again, I
Yeah,
know I'm going to say it multiple times throughout this. Again, it's just like you captured the feeling of a graphic novel, of a
the
Frank
animated
Miller,
series
of a,
being drawn on black paper. Like you
Yeah,
caught
precisely.
that on film.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So give me your guys' thoughts on the overall plot and story first before we move on here.
Well, I would say like because we're talking about this vision of Gotham, and I think that not only was reflected in the way that the movie looked, but in the way that the movie was constructed. What I loved about this script was you had so many iconic characters, but woven in the right way. Like,
yes,
you know, we're going to talk about, we'll go through the cast, but you know, in terms of their role in the plot, the Penguin is not a central figure here, but they do such a good job of, you know, he may have some of the information about who the Rat is, or, you know, he's Falcone's Falcone in this movie, Falcone's right hand. So, you know, let's go, you know, get him in a dark alleyway and interrogate him. And then you have Catwoman, who wasn't just there to foil the plot. She actually had a familial connection, and her storyline was driving forward the main plot as well. And then you have, you know, all this corruption going on in the city, and obviously the Riddler's plot plays into that. So it, you know, we're talking about how this is so aligned to the animated series, and it really felt that way, where we might spend a little time with an iconic character, but they don't have to be the whole. The Penguin was in this movie, but he wasn't our main villain. And that's what Gotham is. And I also loved that, like, every villain, aside from Falcone, is still alive. They're still in Gotham, and
they didn't pull a Marvel and just kill their villain.
Exactly. Like, so it's like, we're that also in the world building, all of the ways that the plots tied together of these different characters still drove towards the same endpoint. And it all made sense. It didn't feel I guess what I'm trying to say is none of the appearances felt like cameos.
No.
They were a part of the story, and it all made sense.
Yeah.
And that's what the animated series in Gotham is. These characters are there every day in the mix doing what they're doing.
Couldn't agree more.
So that was masterful to me.
Brad?
I want to hear Rob. No, I want to hear you. I want to hear you.
I said already. Like I loved. It had me from the word go. Like just like to me, it's so like I can't really sum it up better than Kelly just did. I feel the exact same way. Yeah, it's just, I love this movie. I love it.
Yeah, Kelly. Anything we're gonna say at this point is just an echo of what you just said. But I will say, to have this story and this incarnation of Batman, and the story being told the way it was, and having these characters driving the story, like you said, anytime that a movie tends to have a lot of characters, like they've tried this with other Batman movies from the past, like we're talking like Joel Schumacher kind of Batman movies, and we're talking about other, you know, even Avenger movies and things of that nature, where there's so many characters. Sometimes it can get lost because there's so many different plots we're trying to follow at the same time, that you sometimes start to lose the central understanding of what's going on. And I think for me, what they really did masterfully in this was you got dropped into a Batman story.
Yes.
You got dropped into it. And I feel like it was the first time, in my opinion, that a Batman movie has really done that where you just, other than, you know, you can make an argument for sequels of, you know, whether it was The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises, but this is a movie, assuming that they do make this into a franchise, but let's be serious. They are.
Yes, it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. But this was the first time of a new incarnation of a Batman story where you just got, bloop, here you go. So it's very comic book in that regard, where it's kind of like, you know who this character is. And there's this underlying, the voiceover with Pattinson, like what he did at the beginning of the movie, where it's like you're showing Gotham and you're showing this kind of understanding of who Batman is and what he does and how it's affecting Gotham as a whole.
That
and you haven't even
monologue. That opening monologue is so good.
It's amazing. And it actually, to somebody who we kind of harp on this podcast quite a bit, Zack Snyder, it did give me a feeling of The Watchmen with Rorschach and that kind of underlying, like,
yes,
that like storytelling that just kind of tells you what's going on without spoon feeding it to you. And it's just this kind of inner monologue of what you're going to get with this. And you got it like right away with that monologue. You got it right away. You were kind of like, we are in the middle of like a battle for Gotham, and this guy's fighting for it. Yeah. He's fighting for the heart of Gotham, and you didn't really need to spoon feed it to us. And I loved that. And I loved that from that point on, it was just him navigating what is already going on in Gotham.
Yes.
It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like, oh, this is also going on, so, you know, we got to try to explain it. It's just like, no, this is just what's going on in Gotham. And he's having to deal with these things as they come at him, because it is all intertwined, just like life is. Not you can, no issue in life is black and white that you can just go, this is the problem and this is how you fix it. Very rarely. So to have writing and directing and acting that really lends itself to tell a story like that it's not just kind of like, if I beat up this one guy or if I arrest this one guy, it's over. No, it's layered. And that's why you also got multiple endings within this movie. Like, you thought it was over? Nope. You thought it was over? Nope. You thought it was over? Nope. And it just kind of kept rolling because it's complicated. And the amount of people that I did see that were complaining about this movie, which, I'm sorry, you're dumb. You're dumb. Sit down, stop being, maybe pop some Ritalin, maybe stop watching a million TikTok videos in a row and actually like start to understand how plot of a movie is supposed to work, because it was brilliantly told. It was brilliantly told and actually fleshed out a story that we are constantly talking about. So the plot in general for me was masterful.
Fantastic.
Masterful.
So can I just add one, I want to highlight two things Brad just said, because I think they're important. One is highlighting that this was a Batman story.
Yes.
Whereas other movies have got lost in the villain's story. So while we had villains, we had so many characters. This was all propelled forward by his journey as the Batman. So that is something that we have not seen before. And then I also just wanted to build off something you said, Brad, where it's like, the Batmobile was in this movie, but we didn't have to spend time. Where did he get the Batmobile? Did he find this car and then he got this other engine and then he did, there's the Bat cycle and he built it this way and he carved it. It just was all there, and there was credit given to the audience that we don't need to explain it again. Like, no, these are the things that we have since Detective Comics in the 1930s have a frame of reference for. So we all know the gadgets. We all know the relationship with Alfred. We know these things. And so I thought that also allowed them time to spend more on the world building and things like that, because we didn't spend time telling the audience things they already knew.
That's what I was preaching for months about, what I was so excited about with this movie is exactly what you guys are talking about. I want to talk about the actors, but before we do that, I want to spend just a couple of minutes. Can we talk about Michael Giacchino? Like, oh my God, the score in this movie.
Yeah.
I've been listening to it.
Me too.
I've been listening to it like
just
regular.
Casually walking down the street, like ready to fight crime.
So much. It reminds me so much of like to me it's like a harken back to like what John Williams did with Superman, what Elfman did with the first Batman, where it's like it's so in your face. Like the score in this movie is in your face. Like part of what makes the opening monologue is the crescendoing music. And it's like you just see he's like, they think I'm watching them from the shadows, but I am the shadows. And then you just hear like it's like a sort of like a xylophone version of like bow, 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 bow. And it just like crescendos up to when he walks out of the shadows and he's got his boots on and you hear him coming from a mile away with his boots. Man, the music in this film is unbelievable.
I could not agree more. And that's another thing. If you just sit down and listen to that music, I have 2 points about it. One, it's very much like what I spoke about with the overall feeling that Matt Reeves went with this movie, which was like he took the best parts of previous incarnations and blended them.
Yes.
That's exactly what they did with the score because they both understood it, obviously. Yes. It was an understanding
like a theme song.
Yeah, it was a theme song, but it was also kind of like this tonal understanding of moments. And the thing that I love the most, even as we're talking about it, these thoughts are rolling through my head about like, what are the things that I really took in the most, was taking their time.
Yes.
To take your time and really let something build, whether it was the score, whether it was him coming out of the shadows in that fight scene on the subway platform with those guys, and to the point of even like those trailers, like we saw good chunks of that fight in those TV spots and in those trailers. It doesn't really paint the full picture because when you have that slow burn of the guy that they kind of,
it just builds up and up and up and up.
That gang when they're on the subway, like you see what they were doing beforehand with these kind of like they're filming themselves beating up random people on the street, whether it be a jogger in the park or whatever. And then they're kind of like still in this mode of like, you know, we're gonna just keep this party rolling. We're gonna fight somebody else, and they kind of pick out this innocent bystander, and then it's like this slow burn onto the platform, and you feel that anxiety of kind of like, what if that was me?
Yeah.
What if that
scary.
was somebody I care
scary.
about? And then to have this kind of slow, like boom, 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 out of the shadows,
awesome.
And Pattinson's Batman in this slow, like shadow, like pull over the mask and like him come out, and it doesn't, like I said, those little scenes that they showed in the trailer, it does not paint the full picture. And then to have that guy that he was actually protecting be scared that he was next because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. It was just this beautiful painting of a picture, a full picture of nobody knows who this guy is. And then to have at the end of the film, near the end of the film, not to fully skip forward, but the scene in the stadium where he drops into the water and he's reaching to help those people. And they didn't want to reach their hand out because they don't know. They don't get this guy yet. But then to have this moment where the kid reaches out. Yeah. I'm actually like, it hits me in the feels because again, it's like you understand the source material.
I want to put a pin in that for next week's episode because the internet is going crazy about what that kid could potentially become.
I know.
It seems so cheesy. Before we talk about our pats really quick, it seems so cheesy to like have a theme song, but it works so well. Like when he comes through the glass ceiling at Gotham Square Garden and he just lands and it's like, duh, da, da, da. I'm literally in my chair like
exactly. Yes.
So
yeah.
All right, let's talk about the man himself. Kelly, I'm gonna let you kick this off. Talk to me about Robert Pattinson.
Yes. I love Robert Pattinson. Like I am I've seen some of his work post Twilight. I don't hold him to the Twilight standard, I guess. But this was something new and different. Now, I think this is going to be the area of the movie that people will struggle with the most, people being the general audience, because it is different. It is, we've seen kind of in the news, like, or in reviews and things like that, people kind of saying like he's emo or he's joyless. But to me,
Batman?
Yeah, like this is a guy who moonlights in a bat costume and beating the crap out of criminals in Gotham for no reason really other than just like doing good or finding some purpose in his life. So yeah, this would be a pretty twisted, weird individual.
Yeah.
And also we spend so much of the movie with him as Batman. So yeah, like, and then even the scenes where he's Bruce Wayne, most of them are with him and Alfred. So he would be acting as himself, not as billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne that people seem to be clamoring for. And then we have the one scene at the funeral where, you know, you kind of see him and he's being referred to as a recluse. Mm-hmm. But again, I really think that makes sense. I like sort of strung out rock star, early 30s, you know, and also I kind of like that he was in as Bruce Wayne, he was a little bit of a brat almost, because again, this is early days, you know, he's going to the funeral and he's, Alfred, I don't want to wear your cufflinks. And he's like, where are the cufflinks?
Your father gave me,
you know, this means something. And so
and
this
he
was
kind of chirps him. He's like, what about you? Are you a Wayne?
Yeah. Like I really liked that take. And I think that Robert Pattinson just knows how to do so much with his face, and he knows how to do there's one scene in particular where I thought, oh my God, he's saying so much with his face. When Selena Kyle has the contact lens on her, you know, countertop in her, and he's talking to her, and he really looks like a young boy, like speaking to his crush almost. In his, and I'm like, he's doing so much here where you see this like vulnerable human, but then he gets in the bat suit and he really, the Riddler says it, he goes, the mask makes you who you really are. So, you know, there's so many layers to this performance. I do not have time for the people who are calling him emo, because I think this movie ends with the promise of him realizing he's going to have to change his approach a little bit. And so I think we're going to get that. We just went through an entire Spider-Man trilogy that took him to the point at which people want to see him. Like, we've arrived at the Spider-Man that
you're
people
hitting
know
on
and
it
love.
right now. Thank you.
Yeah, you are.
God,
so
shut up with your whining.
This is a journey, right? And so I think at the end of the movie, we're going to see Gotham is in need of rebuild. So I think you're going to see Bruce Wayne take up that role of philanthropist and helping rebuild Gotham. And I think that that's where he's going to come into the light a little bit more. Now, I alluded earlier in the movie, in this review, to some issues that I had with the movie, and they relate to Robert Pattinson, but I don't actually put them on Robert Pattinson. There's some really deliberate style choices, Brad. You kind of alluded to them taking their time. And I think that was a good choice overall. But I do think there's a couple of scenes where we could have used another pass in the editing room where it just a shot hangs a little long, or you know, we took it. There's one scene that felt always kind of funny to me when he's got Penguin upside down in the car and he walks towards,
down, and
then he kind of like peers into the frame. Like, there's just a couple of shots that felt a little funny to me. So I think part of the heat that our Pats is getting by naysayers about him like kind of being broody, I think could have been remedied with a pass in the editing room to just tighten up his performance a little bit. Again, this is a Matt Reeves thing, I think, a stylistic thing where it's like a stare at a clue went on maybe a second too long. And I think as a result, you maybe would have gained back 10 minutes in the movie. And I think you also would have had people going, you would have got rid of the complaints that the movie's a little too long. So that was one piece that I thought, oh, it's too bad that they just didn't maybe go back and tighten it a little bit, smidgen, seconds. And I think it would have done a lot for this movie, for the general movie going audience. Let me make that clear. So overall, I love him as Batman. I
love his voice.
I love he did so much.
He did like the Keaton thing where he didn't do the city just showed you. He did like the Keaton thing where he brought it down to like a whisper. yeah, he's like this level. Yeah, he's like whispering a little bit when he's talking. It's not so, but also part of that too, in Bale's defense,
Yeah.
part of that too is they've designed this cowl in such a way where like if you could see his nose, so like Bale, his nose was plugged, so he was like a mouth breather. Like he'd be talking and he'd be like, like, and so it's like
Deep
like,
breath.
it's like he. Yeah. So they allowed him to be able to breathe through his nose, which helped him a lot in his like line delivery.
Oh my god!
But I also think the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you guys take the floor with our Pats, is like this movie's a little quieter. He's going to the crime scene and he's surveying and he's talking to Gordon one-on-one and he's talking to Selena Kyle one-on-one. And so that doesn't lend itself to the aggression of the voice, right? Like he had to find that middle ground because he spends 90% of this movie in the suit.
Yeah.
He would have had to get a couple lozenges if he was pulling that voice the whole time.
I'd love to get a count of Bruce Wayne's screen time in this movie. Like how much time is Bruce Wayne on the screen?
8 minutes probably. Honestly.
Yeah, no, it was short. I think for me, I'll say this before I get into like a deep dive about Pat's performance. Did you guys notice there was a moment, and I think it was in I don't want to call it an interrogation scene, but it kind of was, where Batman and Riddler are face to face, but they've got the glass in between, and Riddler's under this assumption that they were partners or whatever, and Robert Pattinson is saying essentially how he is not his partner and that he's a psychopath. I was like, Bale. I was like, it was very like, do you remember that from
when he goes, you're sick, you're gonna die alone in Arkham.
You're a psychopath. But it was the way he said psychopath.
It did sound pretty similar, yeah.
It sounded very similar, and I mean that with pure love. I was like, fuck yeah. But the thing very much full circle to your point, Kelly, was I don't think, not to make the general audience going to sound like they are going to this movie thinking that they're like somehow dumb or something, but it's more just that I think you have to understand true storytelling to kind of get where they're going with this. And sometimes it is harder in a film sense because of the fact that it's so broken up. Whereas like a show, they can kind of gradually give you like those character arcs, and like, so if maybe you have an issue with it this week, by next week, maybe they start to flesh out the fact that, he's going to get more charismatic or whatever because he feels like he has to, where this is going to be like, there's going to be a couple year gap or whatever. And so you really need to tell this story that's going on right now. And this is a character, and this was a specific choice. And it was obvious to me that this really dark, really brooding, really emotional Bruce Wayne is incapable of navigating how his emotions are raging. And
to
me,
his hormones,
but no, okay, well, he's not 18 or 14 or whatever. But
hey, the way he was peeping on Catwoman, you'd think he was.
Well, maybe, but that's just because he has no social
life.
There's
there's heavy implication in this movie that this version of Bruce Wayne is a virgin. I'm just going to put that out there. There's heavy implications.
Wow. Okay. But my point was that I think it was most obvious to me where they were going with this character, with the way that Bruce was interacting with Alfred throughout the movie. To me, that was the deciding moment where I went, oh, okay, he's afraid to let people in. He's afraid to let anything close.
Well, he says as much.
Yeah.
Well, but that's my point. But you don't really get that until like the third act, that it's really obvious at that point that he's going like, I can't, I'm afraid to let you in. I'm afraid to let you in. And so then when you start to circle back to those earlier scenes where he was being really cold with Alfred and being very, you're not my father, and like all of these kinds of lines where to some people it might read as kind of like, oh, this is where they're going with this character where he's just overly no, it's building,
it's
and
rooted
it's building
in emotion. Yeah,
it's rooted in emotion. And this is somebody that has decided that his way of fixing things in this city is to just beat the crap out of everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to do it, where in fact, he has the resources to do more and do both. And again, that is such an important understanding and a fundamental understanding of what this character is and what you need to show people, and to show the arc of emotion of where he started and where he's going. Because I honestly don't know that we've really got that before. There's been echoes of it with Nolan's Batman, with that, Batman Begins, and there was elements of it, but I wouldn't say that it was really there, where this is truly somebody that doesn't know what to do with themselves. Yes. And so I have put myself in this position of, I have to just tear these criminals apart, where later you start to understand, like we just talked about, that it's kind of like, no, you have to be more than that. You have to understand.
The end of the movie, he's like, I need to be hope. Vengeance doesn't make pain go away. I need to be hope. That's
I need to be hope. And then also this underlying arc of Batman, where it's always been like, are you actually helping or are you making it worse? That is a storyline that they did not shy away from and really took their time with as well. And I so appreciated it. Yeah. And it was even scenes where, in the crescendo of the stadium scene and the fights and everything else, and he shot himself with the adrenaline, he beats the crap out of that last henchman or whatever you want to call him, that, they take the mask off and he goes, I'm justice. And you see the light go off. Or excuse me, I'm vengeance. And you see the light go off and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
You really get it. And you really understand.
Matt Reeves' writing is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, but they brought it into such a new way that it didn't feel like a story we've heard before. And even this kind of underlying story that we got with Martha, and she had been in and out of like a psych ward, because there had been this overarching story throughout Batman's history that it's like, is he crazy as well? Yeah. Are we not getting that he's crazy as well? And that's why you get this later relation with, I'm not going to say it, but other villains in the Batman universe, that it's kind of like, that's why there's such a head-to-head there, because there's this understanding that they're both a little off. Yeah. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant storytelling, and I thought Robert Pattinson did it masterfully.
Oh, he's a powerhouse, man. He's an unbelievable actor. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Zoe Kravitz. Catwoman is a character to me that I'm always kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I'm always skeptical. I'm always skeptical about Catwoman, because I like it when she is like sort of part of the story. Like, I don't like Batman and Catwoman team up. I don't like that. Like, I've never been a huge fan of that. Mm-hmm. So I ended up really liking this portrayal by Zoe Kravitz and how the character was written into the story, because that, even though they did work together, they were also at odds and had different philosophies, and she's just a completely different person than him. And she wants to throw Kenzie off the roof and put a bullet in his head, and he's just like, no, don't throw your life away. Yeah. So I thought Zoe Kravitz was really good in this. I thought her writing was really good. I thought the twist with making her Falcone's daughter was really good. She's bisexual. They went really,
they imply that. Yep.
Yeah, they imply that she's bisexual, and which I think works really well for her version of the character. And I thought she was great. I have no complaints about her portrayal and how the character was written in part of the story. It's like coming back to what you said earlier, Kelly, about how these characters are brought into the overall story so well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too bad that Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz are so, like, unfortunate looking, because it really made it difficult to watch them together, Jesus, like the chemistry of these two, like, whew, like they are, she does an outstanding job. You totally feel that she's not evil by any means, like, but she doesn't have the sort of moral compass that Batman Bruce Wayne has, and that's always going to be a wedge between them and their relationship. I thought it was like really sweet that the end of this movie was them so clearly kind of longing for each other, but then metaphorically and quite literally, they take different paths. Yeah. They take different paths. And I thought that was you've probably seen some comics. We're not big comic readers, this group, but we have a general sense of some of the big storylines that have taken place, and you've probably seen the ones where like Batman and Catwoman are getting married and they're like in their costumes and it's goofy as hell. They did such a good job of having these two, like their romance felt so real from the moment that they met each other, and he drops it and he's like, "You're good at that," and like then they start. I was just like, like they're so outstanding. I think what I gathered from, and we'll talk about some of the other characters that Matt Reeves is going to do, and I'm so happy he's going to do, is this is not the last we've seen of Selena Kyle.
No.
So
no.
So I can't wait to see more of these two.
Brad, your take on Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah, I have to say, Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman was such, again, for me, a representation of Matt Reeves and the writing and the understanding of human fundamentals, as far as like she's a product of Gotham. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's such a clear picture to me that it's like she's kind of this innocent, if you will, in all of this that has been formed and molded by what Gotham really is. And I feel like she is kind of like the underlying pin in all of what we get throughout the movie, quite honestly, because it gives you that kind of like, oh my God, like she had to become what she is because of where she came from. So it's an understanding of like human nature, human survival skills. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's always been,
she is a stray. Like,
exactly. She's got a thing for cats.
About strays.
She's got a thing about strays.
And
that's why as she drinks her glass of milk. Yeah.
But even that.
See, like that's the campiness that I love. I'm like, it's grounded, but she's drinking a glass of milk. Also, Brad, you're alluding to it, but I feel like we should say it. Loved the fact that she was Falcone's daughter.
Well, that's what I mean. Just the fact that was kind of like a third act, I guess, in the runtime that we got, and it was like, wow. Like it was such like an interesting take on it that again didn't feel heavy-handed like a lot of movies. I'm not going to go down this road that have tried to do this big like, oh, see, and it's like, nah. But this felt real. This felt like it made sense. It didn't feel like it was taking away from original storylines that we had gotten from the people that had created these and fleshed them out over the decades that the character's been around. It felt like, yeah, that makes sense. That fits and it works. And it works within this kind of crime riddled city that we've got, and why she's like in one breath she's trying to get away from it, and in another breath she can't get out, and she's got to get the money in order to get out, so she has to do the things that she doesn't really want to do, and she's become this person that you can tell there's this underlying sadness that's there even when she's in the club and she's having to play this like part within a part within a part, that she's, she is Selena Kyle, but she's also having to play this role of, cocktail waitress,
yeah,
or this,
and having to flirt with Gil Colson.
Yeah, like it was just which was scary.
Yeah.
But but even just the okay, this was a perfect example. Even the understanding that, as a cocktail waitress, she got this glimpse of Colson, and she's like, no, we made eye contact. That's enough. If I look back, he's gonna come over. That's somebody that if you talk to anybody that has worked in, especially somebody who is female, that has been put in this situation where she has to work in like a club or something like that, and it's very sexualized, they understand that, okay, if I linger, they think this is like an okay to come over and for us to chat. Mm-hmm. That is such brilliant writing. That's such an understanding
of club, dirty,
crazy
DA,
dudes,
creepy, dirty DA dudes.
DA dudes,
and
but
Batman
it's just like,
says something like, "Oh, he's got a bit of an eye contact problem," or he says a line like that, and I'm like, "Oh, look at Batman being woke. I like that."
Yeah. But it's true. But it's just, again, like it's just like little things like that to me felt very real world and very fleshed out in a not heavy-handed, spoon-fed way. It just felt very like, this
it would
feels
happen.
like I'm a fly on the wall in this situation. And anybody who was seeing that would go like, ugh. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and she got it. And anyways, not to go too long on any one character here, that character to me was such like the underlying understanding of what Gotham does to people that it was like, yes. That was such a fundamental character for me throughout the film. Perfectly written. Oh God.
Ow.
This is not how this conversation was supposed to go.
So good.
Last riddle.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah.
Paul Dano just going full incel.
Creepy.
Like,
Yeah.
I had such a crappy upbringing, and I'm like using my intelligence. It's just such a perfect modern take on the Riddler.
Yeah.
He is just so good at playing like the scary psycho villain type.
He's perfect.
The fact that he thinks him and Batman are working together. They also do the misdirect in that interrogation scene where you think that he knows that Batman is Bruce, but then you realize he actually doesn't know that Batman is Bruce.
Yeah, he's just ruminating on that was his only missed target.
Yes.
If you read the prequel novel, that they do a lot of heavy lifting with Edward Nashton talking about his resentment towards Bruce Wayne for that reason that he talks about in the movie, where he's like in a tower with all that money, like just like so.
You're not an orphan.
Resentful, yeah.
I'm an orphan. Yeah,
cesspool we call a city, and like when he kills the mayor at the beginning, he's like, it's meticulous and calculated, but he's also like so unhinged, like he's screaming as he hits him with like the carpet tool, and then you hear him go after he, and it's just like it's
like orgasmic for him.
Yeah,
as creepy as that is to articulate, that is what it was for him, and it's then, like a lot of.
And listen, like it's. They definitely do the incel thing where he's got like an online community where he's found other people like him who are his followers, and he says things creepy. Like "we're not alone anymore" and that kind of thing. And going this route can be controversial with people. Oh, we lost Brad.
I'm fine. I'm here.
Okay.
No, Brad's
continue. Welcome back.
Sorry.
Hi.
Going this route can be controversial because like it's controversial to do like an incel take on a character like this, but I don't think it was too heavy-handed. It was there if you wanted it, but like they didn't like bash you over the head with it too much.
Yeah.
Like if you guys get where I'm going, but I just thought it was a perfect take on the character, and I like how he looks like an absolute nerd. Like there's when they arrest him in the cafe, and then there's the shot to the cop, which I think is probably the most overacted part in the whole movie, with that cop where he goes, "Let's go, pencil neck," and then takes him out of the, and it's just like, settle down. I loved it. Paul Dano, thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I think he said as much in the press junket leading up to this, that like, you know, really the take on this character was showing the two sides of trauma. Like, you know, you either become someone like the Batman or you become someone like the Riddler, or you don't, maybe. But for the sake of the story, maybe
you move out of Gotham.
You know, but for the sake of the story, let's go with that. And then I also just really liked the parallels of the fact that like they both, the first time we see them, they both emerge out of darkness, one doing so more slow and calculated, one doing so screaming and being terrifying. There's a lot of, and then they both keep diaries. One's a little more sensically written, the other one's a little more terrifying. So there is a lot of mirror imaging happening with those two characters. Paul Dano, like just perfectly looks like the type of guy who would be, it's, you know, you sort of in Batman rogues galleries, you have people who have, you know, interesting appearances. I like the fact that he just looked like a regular guy.
That's what makes it scary. That's why
what makes
it's
it
so brilliant.
Scary. And then the other thing I'll say, just as like a kudos to Paul Dano, is you may have noticed that he wears like that sort of, if you read the chat at the end when he's like, "Hey followers, let's get together." You know, they talk about where he got his costume, and it's from like a military store. And then someone says, "Don't forget your saran wrap or your cling wrap." And actually that was an addition by Paul Dano, who went up to Matt Reeves and said, "Don't you think someone as meticulous as the Joker would wrap himself in cling wrap so he doesn't?" Sorry, the Riddler.
We're not there yet.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Someone as meticulous as the Riddler would wrap himself in cling wrap to not leave DNA behind. So I'm just like, oh, like there's so many, Brad, you were talking about details. Those are details. And so you notice he's got like a cling wrap addition to it. So it just little details, a great way to bring this character into a modern day without him wearing a bowler hat and a 3-piece suit. I thought he did an excellent job.
Riddle me this. Backhand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, A+ for Paul Dano.
Yeah, I felt like it was perfect merging of a character that we've already gotten to know in the Riddler in different incarnations, and this new, like you said, Rob, incel, twisted, Saw-like villain with all these kind of psychological ties into the riddles. Like, the Riddler was always obviously psychological, but this is like deep, creepy, underbelly, psychological, like the most base part of like human beings and what we're willing to do to each other. And they allude to that. Gordon says that, like, who would do this to another human being? Like, it just, all of these things kind of obviously paint the tapestry of what this film is trying to show you. And I just thought that the fact that they kept that character, like you said, Kelly, in the shadows, quote unquote, until a certain point of the movie lent itself so well. I thought that I just love that there wasn't this kind of like showdown beforehand, or this kind of like this evasiveness that they kept making him have. And then you actually found out that he was right outside the club the whole time, and you found his like creepy freaking apartment. And like even the little tie-ins with the, you know, the carpet tucker, is that what they were calling it?
Yeah.
And just like understanding and like just all the little details and all the little psychological elements that Paul Dano brought to it. Even things as like what he used as far as like the pitch in his voice. Yes. At certain times it was very low and like, what are you doing? And like all this,
and
but
then it would just ramp up out of nowhere.
When Coulson is like, he's gonna kill me, he's like, shut up, you deserve to be dead after what you did. I just thought it was I just think it's so, there's a fine line that you have to walk when you do a character like this. You want to chew the scenery because I do think it calls for it, but if you chew it too much, it becomes very, very caricature. And I thought that it was such, he danced that fine line like a lot of the other performances throughout this movie, that he found that core feeling of like unhinged, and it would come out in bursts and then he'd catch himself and bring it back down because he didn't want to lose control, because he's this psychological puppet master in this whole thing. That it was this kind of cat and mouse that he was almost playing with himself, of kind of like, not yet, and bring it back down, and not yet, and bring it back down. I just thought it was brilliantly portrayed, just like I said, like a lot of the characters. And I'm really, I don't want to skip over Paul Dano, but I do want to jump to, I know who we're going to talk about next. So, with all due respect to Tim Burton, the damage that man did to the character of the Penguin, to the general population,
I still love it.
I like, honest to God, like, I want to raise a toast to Matt Reeves and Colin Farrell for correcting Oz and the Penguin. The Penguin in the comic books and the actual Penguin is a mobster who gets his nickname because of his gimpy leg and his appearance. He's not a literal fucking penguin man. So
who lives in the sewers?
Lives in the sewers. Who has fins for hands? A shiny flipper. Like, it's just like, like, who held his jiffy baby rattle with a shiny flipper? Like, it's like, thank God that, first of all, they decided to go this route and correct make Oz the real Oz in this movie.
Yeah.
Colin Farrell is outstanding as the Penguin in this movie.
Excellent.
Oh my God, he's so good. He looks so good. His voice is so good. The smarmy smile is so good. When he's mad and at the warehouse scene and he's like, "Hey, vengeance!" and he's like shooting his like Uzi at him. Like, oh my God. And like the car chase where he's like, come on. Like, it's just, it's so, the standout performance of this movie for me, like Robert Pattinson and Colin Farrell are like right there with each other when it comes to like the standout performances in this movie. Colin Farrell is fantastic. I love it. At the end when he like, enjoy a night in Blackgate, Carmine.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you're a big man. He's like, maybe I am. And it's like the insecurity aspect of Oz too. Outstanding.
Outstanding.
I mean, you just captured it perfectly, Rob, so I won't belabor it. But like one of my favorite parts of this movie, it's such a small image, but it just again talks to that campiness that is in this movie for people who are calling it too dark, is when they have him tied up.
Kelly.
And his ankles, and he literally like waddles towards. So I'm like that, like Matt Reeves understands how to keep this serious, but also just insert these little moments of what we know, or what, you know, little nods to things or things that have happened before. So yeah, I again, just so happy that this character is going to be continuing on having their own series.
Apparently the series is, what I'm gathering, not to get too off topic, is these series are going to take place in like different moments in time, where like I think the GCPD one will be a Gordon prequel, whereas like the Penguin one will be a sequel where he's like rising to prominence in the Gotham mob.
Interesting. Anyway, I unbelievable, like physical transformation. And it's funny because it's like, while he doesn't look like himself and he doesn't sound like himself, I definitely see Colin Farrell in that performance. And I mean that in the best way. Like that line of like insecurity. Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I kept saying, well, as these trailers and as these pictures started coming out about this movie, I kept saying, oh my God, Colin Farrell. And the fact that they kept keeping his performance somewhat under wraps throughout the press junkets and everything else, it just seemed like they knew what they had. They had kind of got lightning in a bottle, and that is in no way me saying like the other performances are less than. They are not. But everybody knows when you see lightning in a bottle that everybody gravitates towards it. Colin Farrell was perfect. And I do not use that term. I feel like I keep that in my breast pocket when I actually see a performance that I would put on the upper echelon of perfect. Colin Farrell was perfect. He was absolutely perfect in so many different ways. And I will say this, he actually did an interview on Hot Ones. And if you haven't watched it, you should go. First of all, it's hilarious. Second of all, he gets a little bit more in depth as to his performance as the Penguin and talking about this freedom that he's with the prosthetics. And that freedom to feel like this isn't me anymore. Yes. I can be this person. I thought spoke volumes to the quality of the workmanship that the makeup department did on him.
Oh, if they don't win an Oscar for that, if they don't win an Oscar for costume design on that, like that's
on the whole movie, but him specifically, yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that I know he had probably done as an actor, you do that sort of homework to find the voice, to find the little idiosyncrasies that you need to have, especially something that is a larger than life character, again like Paul Dano, to walk that line, to chew the scenery but not make it unrealistic at the same time. And he didn't go into I was so hoping he was going to say who his inspiration was, because we still don't fully know, and I'm sure he took things from different places. But if anybody knows Joe Pesci, there was a heavy element of Joe Pesci in that.
A bit of De Niro too with the "I got you."
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like those Scorsese mob movies that Scorsese is obviously so brilliant at. There's no chance to me that, and I would love if Colin Farrell actually told us that that's maybe where he got some of his inspiration, is those guys, like those mob movies, those actors that have become synonymous with those types of roles. Because there was even like the little, like you said, Rob, like the little schmarmy grin, or that very kind of like, you know, lackey that's looking for more power that Joe Pesci was so brilliant at in Goodfellas or Casino. Yeah. He just captured it so perfectly. The voice was so perfect.
Oh, the voice was fantastic.
Like you said, the moments where he had to spike it up, it was like he did it perfectly, where he was supposed to be kind of a background character, if you will, to Falcone, or you know, this kind of underling of the mob. He did it so well. He portrayed it so well, and he found those moments to really give you that full performance, and he found the moments where he pulled it back. Oh, I literally can't say it enough how brilliant he was. And it's to the point that I actually think if he doesn't get at minimum a nomination in whatever, I guess it would be next year's Oscars or next year's Golden Globes or whatever, it's shameful. It's shameful, because it's an actual fully discovered, well-rounded performance that deserves some sort of acknowledgement. Yes. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
We're getting close to time here, so we gotta move on and talk about some of the other stuff. But the Penguin moment I'm talking about is when he first meets him at the Iceberg Lounge, and he just looks at him and he goes, "Why don't you ask Mitchell's wife who the girl is?" And then he's like, "What? Too soon?"
Exactly.
Like, exactly. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect writing. Right, perfectly executed.
I want to touch on the ensemble really quick. Andy Serkis, John Turturro, Peter Sarsgaard, like just all three of them are awesome. Jeffrey Wright. Oh, God, Jeffrey Wright. How can I forget Jeffrey Wright? So much Gordon in this. So much Gordon in this. And like a great, like just a lovable version of Gordon here. Like, not that Gary Oldman's wasn't. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying.
No, he was lovable too, but it's just different.
Yes, it's just a different, outstanding. Jeffrey Wright, outstanding. Andy Serkis, even though he was not in the movie very much, also outstanding. His powerful scene where he basically admits to Bruce that he couldn't be the father that Bruce needed was like a super emotional moment. To me, the standout of the ensemble, though, was John Turturro as Carmine Falcone.
Brilliant,
oh my
brilliant,
God.
Brilliant.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely brilliant. Just like at the funeral scene where he's like, your father operated on me right on the dining room table. I remember your face upstairs looking down. It's like, oh my God, like perfect mobster.
Also setting some background, which I thought was so cool.
Yeah.
With the Wayne's family and everything. Perfect.
All right. I wanted to save the last little bit of time to talk about the end of the movie, and I'm just gonna come out and tell you guys that this was the only part of the film that did not work for me at all. I thought this felt completely shoehorned in. This to me reeked of the studio putting pressure on Matt Reeves, saying put our other cash cow at the end of this movie. First of all, how the hell do you say this guy's name? I've heard Barry Keoghan, I've heard Barry Keegan, I've heard Barry Keown, I've heard
I think it's Barry. I would have said
your
Keegan.
Your guess is as good as mine.
So I'll be honest with you guys. I don't love that casting. I don't. And I think part of that is not necessarily his fault. I think we've had like so many iconic actors play this part. And I do think there's an element of wear out with this character. So I think that might be playing into like why I'm not loving it. I've learned my lesson though, like never doubt a casting choice until you see it in the movie. So even though right now
fully fleshed out,
even right now today, I'm saying it's not my favorite. I'm obviously going to give it a chance and see how he's able to execute. But yeah, I just think this wasn't needed in the movie. Agree. And I thought it was super shoehorned in. And I've listened to 2 other podcasts now who have shared my opinion that to me, this reeks of Warner Brothers saying Joker's got to be in this. It's also a blatant ripoff of the ending of Batman Begins too, with a Joker tease.
Yeah, well, it's done differently, but yeah, like this, so when I talked about some of the things that just didn't work in this movie, this is one of them. It honestly felt like we were in Matt Reeves' amazing, visceral Gothic world, and then we switched over to the CW network for a scene. This felt stripped out of like Gotham, or like the TV show Gotham, or like Arrow. Like this just didn't feel like it was the same. I don't know. And I spoke very highly of his performance in Eternals, so I like him as an actor. And again, I'll give him, all the opportunity in the world to prove me wrong. But this character is so iconic. It's not an easy thing to do for anybody. And so what we got, I wasn't super excited about. And then the last thing I'll say is I agree that, there's probably some suits in the mix who are pushing the agenda on this a little bit. Matt Reeves has made some pretty interesting comments about this character. You can go and look it up on YouTube, or there's articles about it, about how there was another scene shot that had Batman going in and speaking to the Joker, and there was like a bit of and he cut that out ultimately. And so based on what Matt Reeves said, there were two takeaways that I did. Was one, that it doesn't necessarily mean the Joker's going to be the villain in the next movie. He's come out and said that. Doesn't, we'll see how that actually plays out. Mm-hmm. And two is that this also is a Joker who's not yet the Joker. He made that very clear, that
and it's heavily based on The Man Who Laughs, which was the initial.
Yeah, and he's spoken a little bit about how his interpretation is someone who's been born with a deformity, that his face is permanently locked in a smile. Mm-hmm. Go and watch this, guys, because it's Matt Reeves himself giving this background. Interesting. And so it is interesting. I have, based on what we just saw, I have faith in Matt Reeves. But gosh, well. I just wish I could go this whole trilogy without the Joker. I know that would really ruffle some people's feathers, but because I'm such a big Batman fan and a fan of the universe of Gotham and villains like the Court of Owls or Mr. Freeze or Hush or like there's so many different ways we could go with this. We'll save that conversation for another day, but this didn't sit well with me, and I hate to end this review on a negative note, but this just didn't work for me at all.
Yeah, anything I say at this point is just a direct echo of what you've both said.
It wasn't needed.
Yeah, it wasn't needed, and saying it was shoehorned in is probably the best way you can put it, because it almost didn't even match the rest of the movie. I don't know that I would say I hate it. I almost felt like it just wasn't executed that well.
No, I wouldn't say I hate it either. But I just think it's like I said, I don't think it was needed. I thought this movie was already long enough, and you got your point across, and everyone left the theater wanting to know and see what comes next. I don't think you needed to spoon feed it to me. And like I said, I think that there's some suits at Warner Brothers who were adamant that this is our other cash cow, and he needs to be in this movie at some point.
Yeah, and listen, again, because you even brought it up that it almost felt like a ripoff of what Nolan did with Batman Begins and introducing like the Joker, because again, at that point, Nolan didn't know that he was necessarily going to do a trilogy, and he wanted to at least allude to a very important character in the Batman universe. You could have just done this so differently. You could have even just, I don't know, shown the other room a little bit and just even have it like very, very Easter eggy, and have him just kind of like walk by the window and almost have like a very obvious shadow of him or something. It could have just been that. And I don't know, the whole dialogue back and forth just felt a little like, but again, I would be very interested. I definitely don't agree. And this is in no way like a slight to you, Kelly. I just don't agree with not having the Joker in it. He's just too important of a character. I would be interested to see that if they do make this into a trilogy or more, because I always find it odd that everything has to be beholden to a trilogy. It's like, why can't you make it into a series?
Well, Robert Pattinson is flat out saying like, I'll play this character as long as they'll have me. So
correct, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know that you need to make it be beholden, like I said, to a trilogy. I would be more curious to see if they can flesh this out into multiple films or what have you, and save them.
Yes,
save them, because I feel like at a certain point, everybody keeps getting like, we got to introduce him now. And it's like, no, the underlying idea that he's around, very much to what they're almost kind of alluding to with the Batman within the script and everything else, that he's like, the fear that he's there is enough. Yes. I like the idea
you don't need
that
we bash us over the head.
Correct. I think if you leave it at that, and maybe this was just our little like tease of him, it's fine. I don't think it's hate worthy. I don't think it like ruins the film in any sort of way. And I know you guys don't think the same either. I just think it was kind of like a meh thing to do. And I do think that it's like, okay, you've done that. Maybe now leave it alone and just give them to us later.
I think just to touch on Kelly's point about not like Joker fatigue. I think part of the Joker fatigue is you've had two iconic like Oscar-winning performances with this character.
Genuinely.
Like, and I think part of that hurts Jared Leto to a degree too. I think a lot of people, when they look at Jared Leto's Joker, they go, ugh, because it's like, you're
in a very select group.
He's sandwiched between two iconic performances. And now you look at this and it's like, and I think that's partially what's playing into the quote unquote Joker fatigue.
Yeah, and if it is in fact Barry Keoghan and they decide to keep him on and whatever it is they're deciding to do with that character, whoever takes that character next, like, bless your soul, because that is a heavy burden at this point. It was already a heavy burden when Heath Ledger took the role up from Jack Nicholson, and now you've got Nicholson,
I'm not even including
an
Jack.
Oscar winner.
I'm sitting here talking about Joaquin and Heath.
Exactly.
There's also Jack.
Yeah.
When Heath took over that role, it was a big deal because he was like, everybody was like, oh my God, the pressure of Nicholson's performance. And then he had to do something different with it, because there's also a pressure to do something different.
Yes.
There are certain, like, you could take the character in a million different roads. It doesn't mean it's right. So you do have to find this like balance of like not stepping on what the character's supposed to be, and also doing something that's a little bit more fresh, or maybe like a version of something that we've seen. Like we haven't, I don't think, seen like a true blue, like Mark Hamill style Joker on the screen yet, which I would be very curious to see. But I don't know that if you do that, people don't just go, that's a repeat performance. So I think it's a very exclusive club that you're in. And I hope that they just give it some time.
Yes,
and maybe
all the more reason to not rush it.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So
get some more villains into Arkham, and then unleash him.
The rumored Arkham Asylum TV show, the third show, is supposed to do exactly that, Kelly, where it's like we sort of they're dropping us in and we're going to meet a lot of these other villains. So I hope that's the route they go. All right, we have definitely overstayed our welcome this week, but this movie deserves the conversation at this level that we just had. I think it's safe to say what would you give it? I give this movie an A. The reason why I don't put it an A+ is because I didn't love the Joker scene. So I'm going straight A for this movie.
Let's do out of 100, because I feel like there's too much of a gap between A and A+.
Okay, so
out of 100, what would you give it?
I think honestly, the Rotten Tomatoes score is about right. It's got a 90% on.
It's 85 now. It's 85 now.
Well, no, that's 85 tomato meter and 90 audience score.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with the audience score. I would give it a 90 out of 100.
Kelly?
I'm going to give it an 85 because there's the Joker scene that didn't work for me. I think to get this to the like general audience a little better, I think, like I said, another pass in the editing room. And I think we would be really saying that this could be better than The Dark Knight. I think it needed just one more pass in the editing room to be absolutely perfect for me. So I'm going to give it an 85, but I also think this is a movie that's going to creep up in that score the more I watch it.
Yeah, I would definitely give it, to me, I don't want to pick like a weird number, but I would almost say like a 94. Just because I do think a lot of people aren't taking into account what actually went on with this production. And to your point, Kelly, you're saying like another pass in the editing room and everything else. It's like, God, the amount of rematching shots and rematching performances and rematching this, that, and the next thing. We talked about this last week, Rob and I, when we were talking about our excitement for the film and the strains that this production was under. The fact that they got this level of a film out of those sort of constraints is incredible to me. I think the level of detail was there. I think the level of performance was there across the board. I think an 85, I can see where some people are maybe coming from, because again, to your point, Kelly, I almost think that score might creep up the longer that this film has to breathe, because, and then even to the point of like maybe the next film almost like elevates the previous, just because you're getting more of that full picture, which I do think happens a lot in film.
Yep.
So yeah, for me, it was above a 90. So I would give it probably in the 94, 95 range, just as far as like the impact I think it's going to have on that character and overall what you do with comic book movies going forward.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our 3 reviews and in-depth spoiler discussion about the Batman. We're going to be back this week, and we're going to do part 2 of this, where we're going to talk about where we think this is going and maybe do a deep dive into maybe some of the TV shows and what we'd like to see from those. So if you don't want to miss that, hit that like and subscribe button below. Turn your notifications on so you're the first to know when part 2 for this is available. Let us know in the comments too, some suggestions you might have, your favorite performance, all that fun stuff. Also, if you're listening to the audio version of this, leave a little review, a little 5-star review. Little how you doing, keep it moving. Like, just like, yeah, help us out. We love that.
Thanks so much
for
how you doing? Keep it moving.
Thanks.
Wow.
Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much. This is like the 4th time I'm trying to get this out now. So here we go. Thanks so much for coming on this ride with us this week, everybody. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.